What is up guys, BAAL here, and look at the Mini Genesis, how can you not love it?
Let's just get this out of the way. Mini consoles, they aren't the same thing as handhelds. Handhelds are handheld, mini consoles they are not. A mini console is usually based off a console released 20 or more years ago, but with some key differences, such as the shell being a quarter of the size, powered by HDMI and DC in cords, and not accepting physical games off the original console, but instead having 20 or more built-in games from the original console. You can't add games either.
Really?
Yeah, the internet found a way. I mean, that's just what happens when you add Super C and not Contra.
They include a balloon fight, but not Donkey Kong 3?
Let's start with the one that started the trend, the NES Classic. Not many complaints I have here, but I have a few. Firstly, the controller wires are way too short, my god. They're like 2.5 feet long. A lot of people have defended this, going, oh, the original controller had wires. But nowadays TVs look like this, not this. I'm not saying make it go wireless, I'm just saying that a 3.5-inch wire would be way better. The controller wires are just so annoying. Sometimes I go too far back and I pull the wire, then the NES Mini drops. It's ridiculous. Why? Also, as a side note, DC in ports aren't the most practical way to power a console, but they work. Sometimes if the console moves too much because of the stupid wire, then it'll turn off the console. Another issue people have with the NES Mini is save states. A lot of people don't use save states because they weren't there on the original console. I get on the original console you could kind of save if you left the cartridge in, but there was a chance the NES would lock up. So I don't see why save states are a big issue. But rewinding with save states is definitely cheating, and that's not how save states are intended to be used, so if you do that, just know you are cheating. There's a difference between completing a game and beating a game. If you want to continue cheating, that's fine, but if you don't want to, then stop rewinding. Apart from that, the NES Mini does the job, I guess, hardware-wise. Next, the game selection. It's decent, but it could be better. There are a bunch of heavy hitters on the original NES that I'm missing. Like, why would you include Super C but not Contra? Games like Contra, DuckTales, Castlevania 3, and Tetris are all missing. Instead of stuff like this, we got Excite Bike, Pac-Man, Balloon Fight, and Mario Bros. And when I say Mario Bros, I mean that very old arcade game. And Pac-Man on the NES, no, just doesn't work. For Pac-Man on the NES, the controls just seem delayed. I wish we got Pac-Mania instead. At least Castlevania 1 and 2 are on here. But honestly, Castlevania 2 kind of blows. I will save my hatred for this game for another video. At least Castlevania 1's a classic. So the NES Classic, hardware-wise, was pretty good and it had a decent game selection. Now let's move on to the SNES Classic Edition. And boy, this is a good console. Games like Super Mario Kart, Super Mario World, Super Castlevania 4, and Super Metroid are all here. The only games that's really missing are Castlevania Dracula X, Turtles in Time, and Tetris Attack. Even then, Castlevania Dracula X is an obscure, inferior port of Rondo of Blood. Like, seriously, how many people have you heard go, I played Castlevania Dracula X instead of the superior version Rondo of Blood? Although it only has 21 games, the NES Mini had 30 games, this is just fantastic. They focused on quality over quantity and they really knocked it out of the park. So many of these games are considered to be the greatest game of all time. You can buy a console with some of the greatest games of all time, excluding a few, for $120. For the price of 2 Nintendo games, you can buy a fully fledged console with 21 games. The controller wires are way longer now, which is great. Honestly, not any complaints here. This is a really good console. Good job, Nintendo. But they didn't include Tetris Attack, so this is a quadruple F tier. Now let's move on to the Sega Genesis Mini. This is a reimagining of the Sega Genesis, featuring 42 of its biggest hits. Once again, the controller wires are a decent length, even longer than the SNES Classic's controller wire. And although I said DC in connections aren't the most reliable way to power a console, the cable included with the Genesis Mini is very stable. A lot of people have an issue with Sega including 3-button and not 6-button controllers, so therefore stuff like Street Fighter 2 doesn't work as well. But this is the controller I think of when I hear the name Sega Genesis. Now the game selection. It's got classics such as Sonic 1, 2, Spinball, Castlevania Bloodlines, Street Fighter 2, Ghouls and Ghosts, etc. But it's missing some games such as Sonic 3 and Knuckles and Sonic and Knuckles. It also doesn't have Sega CD or 32X games, which basically means it doesn't have Sonic CD. But apart from that, the Sega Genesis Mini is pretty good. It's better than the NES Classic Edition, but it's not as good as the SNES Classic Edition. The SNES Classic Edition is easily my favourite one. So that is a quick summary of the 3 major Classic Edition consoles. Of course there's more, such as the C64 Mini and the PlayStation Classic, but those are the 3 major ones. So what's my opinion of Classic Edition consoles? I really like them. They are possibly the best budget consoles out there, but I love how it's bringing a retro experience to a new generation. But if you have the original consoles, there's probably no point in buying them. Just collect the cartridges instead. Okay, now I'm done. Now I'm just gonna go play some Castlevania 2. But 1 and 3 were so good.